The film is set in a rural area during a time of severe dust storms. A family struggles to survive in the harsh environment while confronting natural threats, where we are introduced to Margaret, a mother trying to protect her two young daughters, Rose and Ollie, from the deadly effects of the dust storms. The narrative begins with a frantic and chaotic scene of children calling for their mother amid a storm, setting a tone of urgency that threads throughout the film. The story quickly introduces the family's prayer, which emphasizes their struggles with the elements, specifically storms and dust, hinting at their difficult life on a farm. Also for her husband, Henry, who is far away seeking work, leaving her to fend for the children alone. The stress of isolation and despair weighs heavily on her, affecting both her mental state and her ability to protect her children. She had a daughter named Ada who had passed away from a disease to dust. Rose reads a dark story about the gray man, whom people fear will cause harm, enhancing themes of impending doom and dread. Gray Man is rumored to roam during dust storms. He is said to invade homes, causing families to commit unspeakable acts under his influence. This legend permeates the community and shapes the fear of Margarita's daughters. Ollie becomes frightened of him. She also cannot speak and uses sign language. Whenever you go outside to this place, it is mandatory to wear a mask to protect yourself. Margaret is visiting her neighbor Esther. Her son is coughing, and the doctor says he has pneumonia. They hear the news about local sicknesses and hints of pneumonia spreading among children due to dust, an echo of the family's current issues. There is dust everywhere in the house, on the bed and the floor, and it needs to be cleaned constantly. They gather here together at the church meeting and tell stories about the events taking place here. Esther is losing her will and strength because, no matter how much she cleans, dust always finds a way to settle. As they return home, a storm begins to form, and they hurry to get home before it's too late, closing the windows and searching for Ollie, who has hidden inside. She is looking for her father, claiming she saw the gray man outside and is scared. The mother goes outside to check when no one is around, and then realizes that Rose frightened her with a book. The mother tells them a story to help them fall asleep. She takes some pills and later wakes up, saying that Ollie is right. The gray man is indeed there. Margaret opens the door and wanders around looking for someone, steps out onto the other side and sees a horse. She takes it and goes to check where it came from. She discovers that it was overturned during yesterday's storm, and Esther is covered in dust, while one of the two sons has passed away. People come to offer support due to this unfortunate event. After that, a doctor arrives at Margaret's house for Rose, who has nose bleeding. The doctor's advice is to seal the house as best as she can, and always wear a mask outside. Margaret patches up all the holes she can, but she has enough fabric for only one room and has to sleep with the children who, until now, have been alone because their mother has been sleepwalking since Ada's death. Rose wants to go to her father. The next day, while she is collecting laundry, she sees that the barn doors are open and the cow could escape, which is their source of food, and she gets angry at her daughters. The cow no longer produces milk. Then she hears a noise from above and asks Ollie what she saw, and she again answers that it was the gray man. Margaret takes the weapon and goes to check. The children follow her, and where Ollie is standing, they hear a knocking. A man named Wallace emerges. He needs shelter and says that Henry told him to come. He is wearing Henry's jacket, and the girls are frightened. He says that Henry told him to check on them. Henry would have told them, but the letter is delayed. Before he leaves, Rose starts bleeding and can't stop. He claims he can heal her, but he must touch her. Rose is scared and pushes him away. Rose notices that she is all right now and that he really helped her. Wallace can help them and ensure the cow produces more milk, so he stays. He becomes an embodiment of the dangers lurking not just outside, but also within their own home, as he manipulates Margaret's vulnerabilities and fears. The following day, they go outside and see that it is raining, and they play and enjoy themselves while Wallace stands with his hands up. Later, during a conversation, they see Thomas wandering aimlessly. He is Esther's son, mourning the death of her other son and not feeling well. She sees wounds on her back, and since she is not fit, she takes her son for a while. Esther complains and yells at Margaret. Wallace, he is a preacher like his father was before him. They all pray together for dinner, and Wallace speaks. The girls surprise their mother and show her a letter from their father that arrived today. Wallace calls Ollie to sit with him while Rose reads the letter, in which their father tells them that he received a priest who stole his jacket, money, and a letter that hadn't arrived. He injured the man at whose place he was staying. Margaret bursts out, and Ollie stands up. If the letter that Wallace hid had arrived, they would have had money for a trip to their father. Initially appearing harmless, Wallace's character becomes a source of conflict as his backstory is revealed, hinting at a darker past while he mingles with the family. After that, Wallace goes outside and disappears into the night. They go to sleep. Margaret spits out the pill she pretends to have taken and goes outside. She enters the barn and Ollie comes across the other side with Esther, who, filled with hatred, kills Ollie. And the scene shifts to Margaret, who screams while Rose tries to calm her down. Later that evening, she hears her daughters shouting, and their bed is on fire. She grabs water and thinks that Wallace is responsible. But how could he enter when she has been guarding all night? Rose tells her that the gray man is just a story, and that he doesn't exist. Margaret comforts her, and there is a knocking at the door. Esther comes and apologizes for the things she said, and Margaret lets her inside. Esther says she feels better and is working on herself, and that Margaret needs to come out because she hasn't been around for a long time and needs to show them she is okay. They all get ready together, and Rose starts choking, and Margaret pulls her by the dress. Rose says to let her go because she was just laughing. Before leaving, Margaret makes a cut on her leg to give herself a flushed look from the blood to her face. She goes there, and Rose goes to talk to the sheriff. Margaret interrupts them, and he invites her to dance. He asks how she is to check on her and notices that she is bleeding on her leg. Margaret heads for the door and sees Esther with Wallace, who seems to have only appeared to her. Margaret admits that there was a man hiding with them who threatened them, and Rose helps confirm this. Margaret says that he can enter through locked and closed windows like dust. After that, they leave, and Margaret knits with yarn, but uses her hand she is knitting with, asking who did this. Rose takes scissors and helps her cut it. Margaret hears a sound, grabs the weapon, then goes outside, sees Wallace and shoots, but he disappears and she tells Rose that he is in the air like in the book. They go inside where Rose, without realizing, loses track of Margaret and finds her in another room where she scratches the wall, mentioning the name Ada. Then she goes outside and sees Wallace approaching again and tells her to wake up. But it is Rose calling her not to shoot. Rose says that the gray man is not haunting them, that it is all in Margaret's head, and she sets their bed on fire. The mother says she wants to protect her and does everything for the three of them, mentioning Ada, who is dead. Rose quickly runs away and sees Esther's lifeless body lying outside. Margaret takes Ollie and runs inside, followed by Rose. There's a knock at the door, and Ollie goes alone and opens it, where the sheriff enters. Rose says that their mother is not fit and the sheriff talks to her. He wants to take her children, and she starts crying. At that moment, Margaret stabs the sheriff in the stomach with a knife, and he falls, trying to get away while the children are scared. Rose checks on her mother and hides the knife behind her back while talking to her. They move closer to hug her, and she cries as her hand shakes, saying she is so tired. Ollie comes to the door, and Rose puts down the knife. Rose asks for a story so their mother will tell them like before. Later, Rose anxiously tells her mother that Ollie went outside into the storm, and Margaret goes to find her while tying a rope to the door to find her way back. Rose, crying after a while, cuts the rope which loses its grip, and Margaret notices, lost in the night and storm, starts to cough, falls to the ground, and Rose hugs Ollie and comforts each other. Margaret is lifeless on the dusty ground. In the next scene, Rose and Ollie are on a train traveling to their father, and they see greenery for the first time, leaving their dusty life behind. We can see that Margaret's mental stability deteriorates, leading to paranoia and delusions that reflect her fears about familial bonds and impending loss. Past trauma and current fears intertwine, and Margaret's view of reality distorts, making it unclear where her mind ends and actual threats begin. A crucial turning point occurs when the lore of the Gray Man becomes intertwined with the reality of Margaret's mental state and Wallace's influence. The tension escalates as Margaret begins to lose her grip on reality, leading to dramatic confrontations, including a violent struggle between her protective instincts and her deteriorating mental health. Margaret's past traumas begin to merge with her present fears, particularly the memory of her deceased daughter, Ada. This connection is critical to understanding her psychological breakdown. In a tragic conclusion, lost connection with reality occurs as Margaret believes she's doing right by her family, yet it leads them down a dark path. Hold Your Breath resonates deeply through its atmospheric tension, character-driven plot, and the haunting specter of the gray man, embodying broader existential fears of illness, death, and the fragility of the human psyche in desperate times.